A very good example of the dimensionment of Pakistan in 1971. It is a fact that people occupying the unified territory, especially it is surrounded by the barriers, natural barriers, tend to develop the common interest and common spirit of the underlying nationality. ଭୌଗୋଳିକ ସ୍ଥାନ ବା ଭୌଗୋଳିକ ଉପାଦାନ ଅନ୍ୟ ଏକ ପ୍ରମୁଖ କାରଣ ହେଇପାରେ ଜାତୀୟତାବାଦ ଗଠନ କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ ନିଜ ମାଟିକୁ ଭଲ ପାଇବା ନିଜ ଦେଶକୁ ଭଲ ପାଇବା ଏହାର ଏକ ମହତ୍ଵ ରହିଛି. So the truth is the thing which we call nationality and which is so difficult to define is in essence largely a matter of sentiment. If the people have acquired the character of the nationality, it is because they believed that they have a consciousness of being bound together by the strong ties and affinities which distinguish them from their neighbors. They have a feeling of a common interest and of ideals. Their moral ideas are functionally the same. They have a common heritage of a tradition and memories of a common sacrifice and suffering, or of the achievement and glory, and they share the common pride is great personality and heroes. Nationalism is a self-determination. Nationalism is a self-determination. This principle implies that every nation should be organized as an independent political entity. It raises the question whether every nationality has the right to be a self-governing or sovereign state. We have seen that impartiality exploits of Napoleon Bonaparte sharpened the sentiments of nationalism in many countries of Europe. Thus, after the Battle of Waterloo, the Congress of Vienna 1815 gave the recognition to his principle. Since then, the principle of one nation, one state, one nation and one state. तो ଭିଏନା କନଫରେନ୍ସରେ ତାଙ୍କୁ ଯେଉଁ ମିଳି ଯାଇଥିଲା ଯେ ୱାନ୍ ନେସନ୍ ୱାନ୍ ଷ୍ଟେଟ୍ ର ତାହା ଏକ ନ୍ୟାସନାଲିଜିମର ଉଦାହରଣ ଅଟେ ଯାହା ନେପୋଲିୟନ ବୋନାପାର୍ଟଙ୍କ ପାଇଁ ଆବଶ୍ୟକତା ରହିଛି. ନେକ୍ସଟ ଟାଇପ୍ସ ଅଫ ନ୍ୟାସନାଲିଜିମ. ଫାର୍ଷ୍ଟ ୱାନ୍ ଡେମୋକ୍ରାଟିକ ନ୍ୟାସନାଲିଜିମ. The type of nationalism found expressed in the philosophy of Ross, Bolingbroke, etc. in the 18th century. It was based on the natural law and reason and consisted of the humanism as its essential elements. It assumed a mass appearing character during the French Revolution, which was fought essentially to secure liberty, equality and fraternity. ଫରାସୀ ବିପ୍ଳବ ସମୟରେ ଯେଉଁ ସ୍ଲୋଗାନ ଥିଲା ଭାତୃତ୍ୱ, ସମାନତା ଆଉ ଏକତା, ଏହା ହେଉଛି ନ୍ୟାସନାଲିଜିମ ପାଇଁ ଏକ ଆହ୍ୱାନ ଥିଲା. ଫରାସୀ ବିପ୍ଳବ ଠାରୁ ନେସନ ଷ୍ଟେଟ ଗଠନ ହେବାର ଯାହା ଆମେ ଲକ୍ଷ୍ୟ କରିଛୁ. Under the spell of this democratic nationalism, the French people made a solemn declaration in their constitution that they would not resort to war and conquest against the freedom and interdependence of any people. Next, traditional nationalism. Traditional nationalism was advocated by the cities of Jacobins, particularly Edmund Burke, who was the chief exponent in England. Edmund Burke was highly critical of this express committed by the French Revolution. Traditionalists reputed the general belief of the nationality, the state, and the people were the distinct of character. Edmund Burke, being a conservative thinker, glorified aristocracy and stressed the significance of loyalty of family local of region. ପାରମ୍ପରିକ ଜାତୀୟତାବାଦୀ କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ ସର୍ବପ୍ରଥମେ ଇଂଲଣ୍ଡର ଦାର୍ଶନିକ ଏଡମଣ୍ଡ ବର୍ଗଙ୍କ ବିଷୟ ବା କଥା ଆମେ ଆଲୋଚନା କରିବା। କାହିଁକି ନା ଏଡମଣ୍ଡ ବର୍ଗ ହେଉଛନ୍ତି ଫାଦର ଅଫ ଦ କନଜରଭେଟିଜିମ୍, ରକ୍ଷଣଶୀଳବାଦ କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ ଏଡମଣ୍ଡ ବର୍ଗ ହେଉଛନ୍ତି ଜଣେ ଜନକ। ତେଣୁ ସିଏ ଏହି ପାରମ୍ପରିକ ଜାତୀୟତାବାଦକୁ ଗ୍ରହଣ କରିଛନ୍ତି, ବିପ୍ଳବ ଆଦିକୁ ଆଧୁନିକତା ଆଦିକୁ ସେ ଡିସଲାଇକ୍ କରିଛନ୍ତି। Next, liberal nationalism. It is said that liberal nationalism first took birth in England in the 19th century, and its principal exponent were Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. सर्वप्रथमे इंग्लैंड उदारवाद जातीयतावाद आरंभ होता। यार प्रमुख प्रवक्ता थिले जेरमी बेंथम एंड जॉन स्टुअर्ट मिल। इट वाज इन ए वे ए बाई प्रोडक्ट ऑफ द सिंथेसिस बिटवीन जाकोबियनिज्म एंड ट्रेडिशनल नेशनलिज्म। तेणु जाकोबियनिज्म एवं ट्रेडिशनल नेशनलिज्म मध्यवर्ती चिंताधारा होची लिबरल नेशनलिज्म। द एसेंस ऑफ लिबरल नेशनलिज्म lay in its theory of economic freedom, that is freedom of enterprise. In the political field, it stood for the cause of constitutional government, popular sovereignty, and individual liberty. लिबराल बा उदारवाद जातीयतावाद विशेष करी सांविधानिक सरकार, लोकप्रिय सार्वभौमत्व आउ व्यक्तिगत स्वतंत्रता उपरे गुरुत्व देई थाए। नेक्स्ट, टोटलिटेरियन और फासिस्ट नेशनलिज्म। आफ्टर द फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर a new form of aggressive nationalism known as totalitarian or fascist nationalism arose in Europe. It was opposed to the principle of liberal nationalism, democracy, and socialism, and it declared the nation as the political instrument of human progress. This brand of nationalism was essentially based on their crude notion of racism and divided the people into superior and inferior races and believed that superior one alone had the right to be free and independent. टोटालिटारियनवाद प्रथम विश्वयुद्ध पर यार उत्पत्ति होइथिला। यही चिंताधारा सुपरियर आउ इनफेरियर यही भली चिंताधारा सृष्टि करि थाए। जातीयतावाद मध्य उच्च नीच भेदभाव देखि थाए। नेक्स्ट, क्लासिकल नेशनलिज्म। Classical nationalism is the political program that seeks the creation and maintenance of a faulty sovereign state owned by a given ethno-national group means people or nation, and that sees the creation and maintenance of this state as a primary duty of each member of this group, starting from the assumptions that the approaches unity of a culture is ethno-nation. Classical nationalism is involves the claim that the primary duty of each member is to abide in cultural matters by one's recognizable ethno-national culture. Classical বা জাতীয়তাবাদ ଏଥ୍ନୋ ନ୍ୟାସନାଲ ଏଥ୍ନୋ କଲଚର ଉପରେ ଅଧିକ ଗୁରୁତ୍ୱ ଦେଇଥାଏ କାହିଁକି ନା କ୍ଲାସିକାଲ ନ୍ୟାସନାଲିଷ୍ଟ ଆର୍ ୟୁଜୁଆଲି କ୍ୱାଇଟ୍ ଆଣ୍ଡ ୱାଚଫୁଲ ଆବାଉଟ୍ ଦ କାଇଣ୍ଡ ଅଫ୍ କଲଚର ଦେ ପ୍ରୋଟେକ୍ଟ ଆଣ୍ଡ promote and about the kind of altitude people have to their nation state. Next, anti-colonial nationalism. Anti-colonial nationalism. The irony of this form of nationalism is that it has turned dominance. The irony of its form of nationalism is that it had turned doctrines and principles that developed through the process of nation building in Europe against the European power themselves. In Africa and Asia, it helped to forge a sense of nationhood shaped by the desire for national liberations. Independence movement that sprang up in interwar period gained new impetus after the colonials of Second World War. The overstretched unity and interdependence only after the 1949 communist revolution, having fought an 80-year war against the occupying decolonization in Africa. For African and Asian nations, the quest of political interdependence was closely linked to a desire for social development and for an end of their subordination to the industrialized states of Europe and the USA. ଶିଳ୍ପ ଭିତ୍ତିକ ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ର ହେଉଛନ୍ତି ୟୁରୋପ ଆଉ ଆମେରିକା। ତେଣୁ ଏହି ମହାଦେଶ ଗୁଡ଼ିକ ବିଶେଷ କରି ଏସିଆ ଆଫ୍ରିକାକୁ ମାଡ଼ି ଆସିଥିଲେ ଏବଂ ଉପନିବେଶବାଦର ସୃଷ୍ଟି କରିଥିଲେ ଏବଂ ଏହି ଉପନିବେଶବାଦକୁ ଧ୍ୱଂସ କରି ଡିକଲୋନାଇଜ ବା ଅଣ ଉପନିବେଶବାଦ ସୃଷ୍ଟି କରିବା ଦ୍ୱାରା ଏକ ନୂତନ ଜାତୀୟତାବାଦ ସୃଷ୍ଟି ହୋଇଥିଲା। ଏକ୍ସାମ୍ପଲ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆ, ଭାରତରେ କଲୋନିଆଲ ଶାସନ ଦୀର୍ଘ ଦିନ ଚାଲିବା ଦ୍ୱାରା ଜାତିର ପିତା ମହାତ୍ମା ଗାନ୍ଧୀ ଏହି ଉପନିବେଶବାଦକୁ ଧ୍ୱଂସ କରିଥିଲେ ଓ ଭାରତୀୟମାନଙ୍କର ଜାତୀୟତାବାଦ ସୃଷ୍ଟି କରିଥିଲେ। So we have discussed the different types of nationalism. Now, arguments of the favor of nationalism. Arguments of the favor of nationalism. First one is the argument from the flourishing. Argument from the flourishing. The ethno-national community is essential for each of the members of flourish in particular. It is only with a such community that an individual can acquire concepts and values crucial for understanding the community. Number two, the argument from moral understanding. A particularly important variety of the value is the moral value. Some values are the universal, but they are too abstract and thin. The rich, thick moral values of the desirable from the within Charles Tyers put it. The language of we have come to accept articulate the issue of the good for The nation offers the national framework for moral traditions and thereby for the moral underdeveloping. It is the primary school of the morals. Number four, the argument from identity. Argument for the identity. Communication philosophers emphasizes nurture over nurture over nature as the principal force determining our identity as persons. We come to be the persons we are because of the social setting and the context in which we mature. The claim, the claim certainly have some possibility. The very identity of each person depends upon his her participation in communal life. For example, Nelson Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela. Do you know Nelson Mandela? He was working like a father of the South Africa. Number five, the argument from diversity. The argument from diversity. Each national culture contributes in a unique way to the diversity of a human culture. The most famous contemporary proponent of the idea, Isha Bollin, Isha Bollin, who first was this idea of the significant rights. The the seismograms of a culture are unique. Each present a wonderful exploitation of human potentialities in its own time and place and environment. We are forbidden to make judgment of comparative values, for that is measuring the in immemorable. Now, arguments in the favor of nationalism. Arguments in the favor of nationalism. First one, the arguments from the right to collective self-determinations. A group of people of a sufficient size has a prima facie right to govern itself and decide its future membership. If the member of the group so wish, it is fundamentally the democratic will of the members themselves that grounds the right to an ethno-national state and ethno-centric cultural institution and practices. Number two, the argument from the right to self-defense and to redress past injustice. Oppression and injustice give a group just can and the right to be secured. If a minority group is oppressed by the majority, so that almost every minority member is worse of than of than most majority ones. Simply, in virtue of belongs to the minority, then the nationalist minority claims are morally plausible and may even the compelling. Point number three, the argument from the equality. The argument from the equality. Members of a minority group are often disadvantaged as they have to rely on those with the same language and the same culture to conduct cultural goods. That is, granting differential rights. Number four, the argument from the success. The nation state has been successful in the past promoting equality and democracy. The ethno-national solidarity is a powerful motive for a more egalitarian distribution of goods. Of goods. The nation state also seems to be essential to safeguard the moral life of communities in the future, since it is the only from a political institution capable of promoting the communities from the threats of globalization and assimilations. Okay. Now the conclusion of the form of nationalism. Conclusion, the form of nationalism. No doubt nationalism has its sinister dimensions, but the fact is that it cannot be rooted out. What is request is that the dangerous spirit of the nationalism should be universalized so as to constitute real internationalism. Thus, nationalism must be immunized from the evil effect of Chauvinism, dogmatism, fundamentalism, aggressive militarism, and the like. Nationalism work provide roots for the internationalism. If it is taken in its positive and constructive dimensions, according to the Pandit Nehru, but real internationalism is not something in the air without roots or anchorage. It has to grow out of national cultures and can only flourish today on a basis of freedom and equality and true internationalism. Now, Unity 12 is already finished because yesterday Unity 11 and Unity 12 are the same course, same topic in the nationalism. It is not much more time to discuss about it. Now going to the next Unity 13, anti-colonial movements. Anti-colonial movements. ପୁଞ୍ଜିବାଦର ବିକାଶର ଏକ ମୁଖ୍ୟ ଉପାଦାନ ହେଲା ଏହାର ଚିରାଚରିତ ବୃଦ୍ଧି। ସାମନ୍ତବାଦର ପତନ ପ୍ରକ୍ରିୟା ଆରମ୍ଭ ହେଲା ଏବଂ ପୁଞ୍ଜିବାଦ ପ୍ରତି ପରିବର୍ତ୍ତନର ଆରମ୍ଭ ହେଲା। ନୂତନ ଭାବେ ଉଜ୍ଜୀତ ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ରମାନେ ନୂତନ ଆୟର ଅନ୍ୱେଷଣରେ ଲାଗି ପଡ଼ିଲେ। ଏହି ଅନ୍ୱେଷଣ କ୍ରମଶଃ ଅନ୍ୟ ଦେଶମାନଙ୍କଠାରୁ ସମ୍ପତ୍ତି ବାଜ୍ୟାପ୍ତ କରିବାର ଅନ୍ୱେଷଣକୁ ଜନ୍ମ ଦେଲା। ଏହା ୟୁରୋପୀୟ ସାମ୍ରାଜ୍ୟମାନଙ୍କୁ ଅଜ୍ଞାତ ଅଞ୍ଚଳମାନଙ୍କର ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ର ପ୍ରାୟୋଜିତ ଆବିଷ୍କାର ପାଇଁ ଆବଶ୍ୟକତା ସୃଷ୍ଟି କଲା। ଏହାର ଉଦାହରଣ ହେଲା କଲମ୍ବସ, ମାର୍କୋପୋଲୋ ଭାରତ ଅନ୍ୱେଷଣ, ପ୍ରଶାନ୍ତ ମହାସାଗର ଦ୍ୱୀପପୁଞ୍ଜକୁ ଆବିଷ୍କାର, ଆମେରିକାର ଆବିଷ୍କାର, ଭାରତ ମହାସାଗର ଓ ଚୀନ ସାଗରକୁ ପ୍ରବେଶ ଇତ୍ୟାଦି। ଏହା ଫଳରେ ଏକ ନୂତନ ବିଶ୍ୱ ବଜାର ସୃଷ୍ଟି ହେବାକୁ ଲାଗିଲା ଏବଂ ୟୁରୋପୀୟ ମାନେ ବିଭିନ୍ନ ଦେଶକୁ ବେପାର ବାଣିଜ୍ୟ କରିବାକୁ ଯାଇ ଉପନିବେଶବାଦ ଆରମ୍ଭ କଲେ। ଏହି ଉପନିବେଶବାଦର କାରଣ ହେଲା ଯେ ଧୀରେ ଧୀରେ କଲୋନିଆଲିଜିମ ଗୋଇଂ ଟୁ ଦ ଇମ୍ପେରିଆଲିଜିମ। ଇମ୍ପେରିଆଲିଜିମର ମୂଳ ହେଉଛି କଲୋନିଆଲିଜିମ। ଉପନିବେଶ କାରଣ ହେଲା ଯେ ଦ୍ୱିତୀୟ ବିଶ୍ୱଯୁଦ୍ଧ ପୂର୍ବରୁ ଆଧୁନିକ ଜାତୀୟତାବାଦ ବିଭିନ୍ନ ଉପନିବେଶ ଗୁଡ଼ିକରେ ସାମ୍ରାଜ୍ୟବାଦ ବିରୋଧୀ ଆନ୍ଦୋଳନ ରୂପ ନେଇଥିଲା। ଏହା ଜାତି ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ର ବା ନେସନ ଷ୍ଟେଟ ସହିତ ଅଭିନ୍ନତା ପ୍ରତିପାଦନ ଓ ଗୌରବ ସୂଚିତ କରୁଥିଲା। ଏହା ଶକ୍ତି ତଥା ଜାତୀୟ ଆତ୍ମପୂର୍ଣ୍ଣତା ପାଇଁ ଏକ ଅନ୍ୱେଷଣ ଥିଲା। ବିଭିନ୍ନ ଉପନିବେଶ ଗୁଡ଼ିକରେ ଜାତୀୟ संगठन गुड़िक अभ्युदय स्वाधीनता पाई जातीय मुक्ति आंदोलन को शक्तिशाली करी गढ़ी तोड़िला। मनस्तात्विक दृष्टिकोणरू जातीयतावादर उत्पत्ति को अनुसरण कले या देखा मिल जे यूरोपीय शक्ति एवं संस्कृति उपनिवेश गुड़िकर पारंपरिक संस्कृति और अनुष्ठान गुड़ी तलितलांत कर देइथिला। पाश्चात्य शिक्षा लाभ करितबा सही मूल अधिवासी माने निजर पारंपरिक विचारधारा को अलग हो जाइथिला। निजर चिंताधारा निजर शिक्षा अन्य देश उपरे ताहा लदी देइथिले। प्रोसेस ऑफ डीकोलोनाइजेशन अण उपनिवेशीकरण बोली एक धारणा सृष्टि होइतिला। प्रक्रिया शांतिपूर्ण थिला किंतु यह वास्तव में सेहीपरि नथिला। यह एक हिंस्र प्रक्रिया थिला जेउठारे उपनिवेश शक्ति माने कपटता युद्ध एवं सहज आक्रमण आदि कौशल गुड़िक अवलंबन करुथिले। विभिन्न प्रकार संघर्ष द्वारा उपनिवेश गुड़िक मध्य स्वाधीनता मिलिथिला। आफ्रिकीय उपनिवेश सेनेगाल, पश्चिम आफ्रिकार आइभरी कोस्ट तथा ब्रिटिश उपनिवेश तथा घाना नाइजेरिया इत्यादि देशर स्वाधीनता हासिल प्रक्रिया शांतिपूर्ण थिला बेले अन्य केतेक अंचल क्षेत्र रे एही स्वाधीनता जातिसंघ हस्तक्षेप करिबा फरे संभव होइतिला। सीरिया, पालेस्टाइन, लेबानन, इराक, रुवांडा, बुरुंदी, कैमरून एवं प्रशांत क्षेत्र पैसिफिक टेरिटोरीज यही सब अंचल जो माने जातिसंघ द्वारा क्षमता प्राप्त क्षेत्र हिसाब से घोषित होइतिले पर से माने हुए तो स्वाधीनता लाभ करितिले। एही उपनिवेश विरुद्ध रे भारतर प्रमुख उदाहरण हेउचंती महात्मा गांधी एवं आफ्रिकार ज्वलंत उदाहरण होउचंती नेल्सन मंडेला। दक्षिण आफ्रिका रे अण उपनिवेशीकरण इतिहासर और नाम्बियार जनसाधारण संघर्ष विशेष भाव में उल्लेखयोग्य। ऐतिहासिक दृष्टिकोण डच मानक शासन सर्वप्रथमे दक्षिण आफ्रिका स्थापन होइतिला। 1652 मसीहा बेलू से केपटाउन रे बस स्थापन करथिले। धीरे धीरे डच एवं इंग्लैंडियन माने दक्षिण आफ्रिका को मारी जाइथिले एवं नेल्सन मंडेला विद्रोह फल कॉलोनियल रो ध्वंस पाइथिला और साउथ आफ्रिका जातीयतावाद फेरी पाइथिला। इंपैक्ट ऑन डीकोलोनाइजेशन अण उपनिवेशीकरण एवं आंतर्जातिक समुदाय विस्तार लाभ फल आंतर्जातिक संपर्क विभिन्न वास्तव में अंतरराष्ट्रीय हो जाइथिला। अण उपनिवेशीकरण प्रक्रिया समाप्ति पर एशिया, आफ्रिका एवं लाटिन अमेरिकार नूतन एवं सार्वभौमत्व क्षमता संपन्न राज्य मानकर अभ्युदय घटिथिला। उक्त राष्ट्र गुड़िक मध्य आदर्शगत विचारधारा प्रतियोगिता निश्चित भाव में आंतर्जातिक गुरुत्व को लड़े देथिला। एही समय स्वाभाविक भाव में एक निरपेक्ष वैदेशिक नीति अवलंबन करथिले। ताहाको कहा जाए गोष्ठी निरपेक्ष आंदोलन नाम नॉन अलाइनमेंट मूवमेंट। यही नाम प्रमुख कर्ता थिले भारतर प्रधानमंत्री पंडित जवाहरलाल नेहरू। पंडित जवाहरलाल नेहरू गोष्ठी निरपेक्षता को सेमानक जातीय सम्मान एवं मर्यादार प्रतीक हिसाब से ग्रहण करने को से निर्देश देइथिले। निज निजर वैदेशिक नीतिर आभिमुख्य माध्यम से माने एक नूतन परिचय सृष्टि देवाई चाहिए। यही नाम सृष्टि हवा द्वारा डीकोलोनाइजेशन बा आंटी कोलोनाइजेशन आंदोलन सृष्टि होता। यह सहित द्वितीय विश्वयुद्ध पर जो सृष्टि होइथिबा शीतल युद्ध अमेरिका एवं रूसिया मध्य शीतल युद्धर पृथ्वी दुई भाग होता बाइपोलर सिस्टम हो जाइथिला। अमेरिका माने उदारवादी उपपूंजीवादी नीति को आधार करी गोष्ठी गठन करुवा बेले रशिया माने साम्यवाद नीति को आधार करी गोष्ठी गठन करुथिले। यही दृष्टि यह पतन करने पंडित जवाहरलाल नेहरू एवं नाम गोष्ठी जो आफ्रिकीय और इंडिया एशियन माने एक नूतन गोष्ठी निरपेक्ष सृष्टि करने द्वारा उपनिवेशवादर पतन घटितिला। उपनिवेशवादर पतन घटितिला। धीरे धीरे अण उपनिवेशवाद चिंताधारा प्रथमे एशिया रु आरंभ होइथिला ताहा क्रमे क्रमे आफ्रिका एवं अन्य देश को मारी जाइथिला। यार उद्देश्य थिला नूतन करी स्वाधीन प्राप्त करिथिबा राष्ट्र गुड़िक पुणी थरे निजर स्वाधीनता को हजिया पाई से चाहू नथिले। तेणु एही दृष्टि अण उपनिवेशवाद को अण उपनिवेशवाद गोष्ठी सृष्टि होइथिले निजर स्वाधीनता को बजाय रखिबा पाई। नाउ आई एम गोइंग टू नेक्स्ट यूनिट 14. Next unit 14. The next unit is 14, nationality and self-determination. The next unit is unit 14. Please see the unit 14, nationality and self-determination. What is nationality and nation? The same topic already discussed about it, nation and nationalism. Once again, see the term nationality, however, is extremely difficult to define. Doubtless, it comes from word nation as an abstract noun in the means of a nationhood. The fact of being a nation, for example, the nationality of the poor or the slave, or being members of the nation. For example, my Indian nationality. Political freedom in term is conceived in two ways. First one, complete independence with sovereign status. Number two, self-determination, that is large autonomy freedom to control the internal affairs of the people within the framework of a national state or an empire. It should be noted, however, that when the second arrangement exists, the top government gives the arrangement the same of a self-government. But the concerned people call it self-determination. Self-government, also known as the self-determination, जोटा को आमे स्वायत्त शासन बोली कहि थाउ ताकू मध्य स्वयं निर्धारण बोली कहा जाय थाए. The difference between the two concepts lies in the fact that self-government is supposed to be gift of the central imperial government with self-determination is supposed to have the acquired by the local people through struggle. Self-government रे local people स्थानीय बासिंदा मानों को नहीं ताहा परिचालित होता है. In self-government, the central or the imperial government retain the ultimate if normal control over the local government, while it is self-determination, the local people retain their opinion, claim the sovereign independent status. किंतु सेल्फ डिटरमिनेशन क्षेत्र रे लोकल लोक माने स्थानीय बासिंदा माने निजर मत उपस्थापन करंती, निजर प्रपोजल उपस्थापन करिथांती, निजर शासन निजे ही करिथांती. In both the cases, however, there is a tendency of a subordinate government to move towards complete independence. Next, the British colonies. The United Kingdom granted the white colonies substantial self-government in 1929, called them dominions. Britain also came to loosely call her empire the British Commonwealth in 1917. The Montego-Chelmsford reforms proposed a certain among the devolution of power to the British Indian provinces in the form of a diarchy that was rejected by the major political parties in British India. In 1920, they demanded dominion, dominion status, which the Simon Commission refused to grant. It proposed devolution of more power to the province and some power of the center to the administered by the Indian subject. So, the civil disobedience movement of the 1930, the Indian Independence Act 1947 granted the British India after the partition of the status of independent dominion. The Constitution Assembly or Indian proclaimed India as a sovereign democratic republic but chose to remain a member of the Commonwealth of Nations in the renamed British Commonwealth. India ଭାରତକୁ ଦୀର୍ଘ ଦିନ ଧରି ନିଜ ଅଧୀନରେ ରଖିଥିଲା। ତେଣୁ ଭାରତୀୟ ମାନେ ବିଦେଶୀ ଶାସନରୁ ମୁକ୍ତ ହେବା ପାଇଁ ସ୍ୱରାଜ ଦାବି କରିଥିଲେ। ଗାନ୍ଧୀଜୀ ଏବଂ ଅନ୍ୟାନ୍ୟ ଭାରତୀୟ ଲିଡର ମାନଙ୍କ ଦ୍ୱାରା ସ୍ୱରାଜ ଦାବି ହେଇଥିଲା। 1920 ରେ ନନ୍ କୋପରେସନ ମୁଭମେଣ୍ଟ, 1930 ରେ ସିଭିଲ ଡିସଓବିଡିଏନ୍ସ ମୁଭମେଣ୍ଟ एंड 1942 रे व्हाइट इंडिया मूवमेंट स्टार्ट होइथिला। तेणु ब्रिटिश माने भारत छाड़िबा को बाध्य होइतिले एवं ब्रिटिश कैबिनेट भारत को स्वाधीनता देबा पाई स्थिर करितिले एवं ताहा स्वाधीनता प्रदान करितिला 1947 रे। या होची सेल्फ डिटरमिनेशन। नेक्स्ट, the historical roots, people, nationality and nation. At this stage, people, nationality and nation. At this stage, a clarification is necessary between the term nation, nationality and the people. Though these terms have been used interchangeably in popular discourses, they grew in different historical contexts. In the first place, the term people is more specific than the term population. The term people is more specific than the term population. Population has a generic meaning, an assortment of individuals in a territory. When in 1789, French Revolution, in 1789, the third state of the French legislature declared that sovereignty in France belongs to the French nation and called itself National Assembly. फ्रांस रे राजा चतुर्दश लुई 16 लुई उच्च नीच भेदभाव सृष्टि करथिले। फर्स्ट स्टेट सेकंड स्टेट, फर्स्ट स्टेट थिले किंग एंड सेकंड स्टेट थिले नोबेल्स माने। एथिरे अन्य काहाकू प्रवेशर स्थान नथिला। तो लोक माने 1789 रे विद्रोह करी विप्लव करी पार्लियामेंट भीतर प्रवेश करथिले एवं आउ एक दल बा आउ एक गोष्ठी सृष्टि होइतला थर्ड स्टेट, जोटा कि कृषक श्रमिक बा साधारण जनता मानको नेकी गठित होइतला। ताही थिला नेशनल पीपल और पॉपुलेशन। So it is a very simple term, people and the population. The Covenant of the League of Nations and the Charter of the United Nations organization took name of the people. Next point, the content of nationality. The content of nationality. We have noted that in the 1770s, a romantic view of peopleness emerged in Germany. It is sought to unity of the Germany people on the basis of language. Basis of language. ଜର୍ମାନୀ ଗୋଟେ ଏକ ବିଚିତ୍ର ଦେଶ। ସେଠି ଭାଷା ନିଜ ବର୍ଣ୍ଣ ନିଜ ଜାତିକୁ ଅଧିକ ଗୁରୁତ୍ୱ ଦିଆଯାଏ। ଅତ୍ୟନ୍ତ ମାନେ ଅଲଗା ଭାଷା କହୁଥିବା ଲୋକକୁ ପ୍ରବେଶ କରିବାକୁ ଦିଆଯାଏନି। ଅଲଗା ବର୍ଣ୍ଣର ଲୋକମାନଙ୍କୁ ପ୍ରବେଶ କରିବାକୁ ଦିଆଯାଏନି। ତ ଶୁଣିଲେ ମତେ ଆଶ୍ଚର୍ଯ୍ୟ ହେବ ଯେ ଯଦି ମଦର ମାନେ କଳା ବର୍ଣ୍ଣର ପିଲା ଜନ୍ମ କରନ୍ତି, ସେ କଳା ପିଲା ତ ମାରି ଦିଆଯିବା ସହିତ ସେ ମଦରକୁ ମଧ୍ୟ ପନିଶମେଣ୍ଟ ଦିଆଯାଏ। ସେଠି ବିଚିତ୍ର ନୀତି, ପିଲା କଳା ହବ କି ଗୋରା ହବ ମଦ ଜାଣିଥାଏ କି? କିନ୍ତୁ ଜର୍ମାନ ଶାସକଙ୍କ ଆଦେଶ ଜର୍ମାନୀରେ କେବଳ ଗୋରା ପିଲା ଜନ୍ମ ହେବେ, କାରଣ ଭଗବାନଙ୍କର ଜାତି ହଉଛନ୍ତି ଗୋରା ଜାତି। ଜର୍ମାନୀ ମାନଙ୍କୁ ଭଗବାନ ପଠେଇଛନ୍ତି। ଏଇ ଯୋଉ ଚିନ୍ତାଧାରା, ରେସିଆଲ ସିଷ୍ଟମ, ଲାଙ୍ଗୁଏଜ, ଜର୍ମାନୀରେ ନ୍ୟାସନାଲିଟିକୁ ଅଧିକ ଦୃଢ କରିଥିଲା, যেটা উগ্র রূপ ধারণ করেছিল, যাফଳରେ ଜର୍ମାନୀ ଇଟାଲୀ ଉଗ୍ର ଜାତୀୟତାବାଦ ପାଇଁ ବାରମ୍ବାର ଯୁଦ୍ଧକୁ ନିମନ୍ତ୍ରଣ କରିଥିଲେ। ଫାର୍ଷ୍ଟ ୱାର୍ଲଡ ୱାର, ସେକେଣ୍ଡ ୱାର୍ଲଡ ୱାର ତାଙ୍କର ଏଇ ଉଗ୍ର ଜାତୀୟତାବାଦ ଚିନ୍ତାଧାରା ପାଇଁ ହେଇଥିଲା। ଜାତୀୟତାବାଦ ଠିକ ଅଛି, ଆମେ ସମସ୍ତେ ମାତୃଭୂମିକୁ ଭଲ ପାଉଛେ, ସମସ୍ତେ ମାତୃଭୂମିର ସ୍ନେହ ମମତାରେ ବାନ୍ଧି ହେଇଛେ, କିନ୍ତୁ ଅତ୍ୟଧିକ ଭଲ ପାଇବା ତାହା ନିହାତି ଖରାପ। ଉଗ୍ର ଜାତୀୟତାବାଦ ପରେ ଆମେ ନିଜକୁ ବଡ ବୋଲି ଭାବିବା ଓ ଅନ୍ୟମାନଙ୍କୁ ନିଚ ଦୃଷ୍ଟିରେ ଦେଖିକି ତାଙ୍କ ପ୍ରତି ଘୃଣ୍ୟ ଭାବ ସୃଷ୍ଟି କରିବା, ଯାହା ଫଳରେ ଆମର ପଡୋଶୀ ଦେଶ ସହିତ ଆମର ଉତ୍ତମ ସମ୍ପର୍କ ରହିବନି, ତାହା କେବଳ ଡାକି ଆଣିବ ଯୁଦ୍ଧ, ଆଉ ଯୁଦ୍ଧ ହିଁ ଏହାର ସମାପ୍ତ। ନେକ୍ସଟ, ଦ ଡିବେଟ ଅନ୍ ଦ ସେଲ୍ଫ ଡିଟରମିନେସନ। ସେଲ୍ଫ ଗଭର୍ଣ୍ଣମେଣ୍ଟ ଗଲା, ସେଲ୍ଫ ଡିଟରମିନେସନ ସ୍ୱୟଂ ନିର୍ଦ୍ଧାରଣ, ଦ କଣ୍ଟେଣ୍ଟ ଅଫ ସେଲ୍ଫ ଡିଟରମିନେସନ। Wilson promise of the right of the self-determination to nationalistic had three kinds of critics. One was the straightforward conservative who did not like the breakdown of the territorial system of the old empires. The second group comprised that radical who thought that Wilson's program was too limited in scope of confined to only the Austro-Hungarian Empire and did not touch the traditional empires like the British and the French. It took a blind eye to the entire colonial world. The third group of critics was the pragmatic one. They thought that the modern states are too much heterogeneous to allow a next streamlining borders along the ethnic lines. Ethnic କହିଲେ ମୂଳ ବାସିନ୍ଦା, ମୂଳ ଗୋଷ୍ଠୀ, ମୂଳ ତତ୍ତ୍ୱ, ଯାହା ମୂଳ ତତ୍ତ୍ୱର ମୂଳ ବାସିନ୍ଦାର ନିଜସ୍ୱ ଭାଷା, ନିଜସ୍ୱ ଅଞ୍ଚଳ, ନିଜସ୍ୱ ସଂସ୍କୃତି, ନିଜସ୍ୱ ଧର୍ମକୁ ନେଇ ସେମାନେ ଗର୍ବିତ ଅନୁଭବ କରନ୍ତି। କିନ୍ତୁ ମଡର୍ଣ୍ଣାଇଜେସନ ସମୟରେ ହେଟ୍ରୋଜେନିୟସ୍, ବାର ମିଶା ସଂସ୍କୃତି, ବାର ମିଶା ଭାଷା, ବାର ଜାତିର ମିଶ୍ରଣରେ ସୃଷ୍ଟି ହୋଇଥାଏ। ତେଣୁ ସେଠି ସେଲ୍ଫ ଡିଟରମିନେସନ କରିବା ଏତେ ସହଜ କାମ ହୋଇ ନଥାଏ। The first two critics are the course of partition. It is the third critic that requires the academic consideration. Lord Curzon, the British Foreign Secretary and former Governor General of India, who had partitioned Bengal in 1905, it created with the comment that right to national self-determination is a two-edged sword, meaning that it is the unite as well as divides people. Whatever partition is made of the state territory, dissatisfy the minorities will exist, and a contiguous state will the continuous induce of the threatening of speech. ଯେତେବେଳେ ଲର୍ଡ କର୍ଜନ 1905 ମସିହାରେ ବଙ୍ଗଭଙ୍ଗ କରିଥିଲେ, ମନେ ଥିବ ଲର୍ଡ କର୍ଜନ ବଙ୍ଗଭଙ୍ଗ 1905 ରେ କରିଥିବା ବେଳେ ଭାରତୀୟ ମାନେ ଭାବିଲେ ଆମ ବଙ୍ଗଳାକୁ ଇଏ ଧ୍ୱଂସ କରିଦଉଛନ୍ତି, ବଙ୍ଗଳାର ଲୋକମାନଙ୍କ ମଧ୍ୟରେ ଡିଭାଇଡ ପଲିସି କରୁଛନ୍ତି, ତେଣୁ ସେଲ୍ଫ ଡିଟରମିନେସନ, ଏଠି ସେଲ୍ଫ ଡିଟରମିନେସନ ଆରମ୍ଭ ହୋଇଥିଲା ଏବଂ ବ୍ରିଟିଶ ବିରୁଦ୍ଧରେ ମଧ୍ୟ ଆନ୍ଦୋଳନ ସୃଷ୍ଟି ହୋଇଥିଲା। ମୁସଲିମ ମାନଙ୍କୁ ନେଇକି ପୂର୍ବବଙ୍ଗ, ହିନ୍ଦୁ ମାନଙ୍କୁ ନେଇକି ପଶ୍ଚିମବଙ୍ଗ, ଏହି କାରଣ ଦର୍ଶାଇ ଏହାକୁ ଭାଗ କରିଦିଆଯାଇଥିଲା। ଏହାର ପ୍ରତିବାଦରେ ବଙ୍ଗଳାବାସୀ ମାନେ ରାଜରାସ୍ତାକୁ ଓହ୍ଲାଇ ବିଦ୍ରୋହ ଆରମ୍ଭ କରିଥିଲେ। Next point, the Indian cases. ଭାରତୀୟ କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ କଣ ହେଇଥିଲା? It is the well known fact that the whole of India was never politically united before the British advent. Even the British were not able to administer the whole of India uniformly. About 2/3 of a subcontinent was under their direct rule, and 1/3 under 562 native states of the different size and the strength. ଶୁଣିଲେ ମଧ୍ୟ ଆଶ୍ଚର୍ଯ୍ୟ ଲାଗିବ, ବ୍ରିଟିଶ ମାନେ ଭାରତକୁ ଆସିବା ପୂର୍ବରୁ ଭାରତ ବର୍ଷ, ଆମେ ଯୋଉ କହୁଛେ ଭାରତ ବର୍ଷ, ତାର ପ୍ରକୃତ ସୀମା ନିର୍ଦ୍ଧାରଣ ନଥିଲା। ଭାରତ କୋଉଟା ତା ଆମେ ସଠିକ କହିପାରୁନଥିଲେ। ଆଫଗାନିସ୍ତାନ ମଧ୍ୟ ଭାରତରେ ଥିଲା, ବେଲୁଚିସ୍ତାନ ମଧ୍ୟ ଭାରତରେ ଥିଲା, କରାଚି ମଧ୍ୟ ଥିଲା, ଏପଟେ ନେପାଳ ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ ଥିଲା, ସେପଟେ ବାଂଲାଦେଶ ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ ମଧ୍ୟ ଭାରତ। ଆକ୍ଚୁଆଲି ଭାରତର ସୀମା କୋଉଠି? ଶ୍ରୀଲଙ୍କା ମଧ୍ୟ ଭାରତ ଅଣ୍ଡର ରହୁଥିଲା। ତେଣୁ ଭାରତର ସୀମା କୋଉଠି ଆମେ ତାହା ସମ୍ପୂର୍ଣ୍ଣ ଭାବେ କରିପାରୁନଥିଲେ। ପାଖାପାଖି 562 ସ୍ଥାନୀୟ ରାଜା ଦ୍ୱାରା ଭାରତ ଶାସିତ ହେଉଥିଲା। ଭାବି ପାରୁଛ, ଗୋଟିଏ ଦେଶରେ 562, କମ ସେ କମ 562ଟା ରାଜା ମାନେ ଶାସନ କରୁଥିଲେ। ଯୋଉଠି ଏତେ ଗୁଡିଏ ରାଜା ଗୋଟେ ଦେଶକୁ ଶାସନ କରୁଥିଲେ, ସେ ଦେଶର ୟୁନିଫିକେସନ କୋଉଠି ଆସିବ? ଜାତୀୟତାବାଦୀ କୋଉଠି ଆସିବ? ସେଲ୍ଫ ଡିଟରମିନେସନ କୋଉଠି ଆସିବ? ଆମେ ଭାରତ ମାତାକୁ ନେଇ ଗର୍ବ କେମିତି କରିବା? ଯାହା ଫଳରେ ଆଲେକ୍ସାଣ୍ଡର ଏହାକୁ ମାନେ ଏହି କାରଣ ଯୋଗୁ ଆଲେକ୍ସାଣ୍ଡର ଭାରତକୁ ସହଜରେ ବିଜୟ କଲା। ଏହି କାରଣ ଯୋଗୁ ଆଫଗାନ, ତୁର୍କ, ଇରାକ ଶାସକ, ମୁଗଲ ଶାସକ ମାନେ ଭାରତକୁ ଆକ୍ରମଣ କରିପାରିଲେ। ଏହି କାରଣ ଯୋଗୁ ଇଂରେଜ, ଫ୍ରେଞ୍ଚ, ଡଚ, ଓଲନ୍ଦାଜ ଏମାନେ ମଧ୍ୟ ଭାରତକୁ ସହଜରେ ବିଜୟ କରିପାରିଥିଲେ। କାରଣ ଭାରତ ମାନଙ୍କ ମଧ୍ୟରେ ନ୍ୟାସନାଲିଟି ନଥିଲା। କାରଣ ଡିଭାଇଡ ରୂଲ ଯାଏ, ଛୋଟ ଛୋଟ ରାଜ୍ୟକୁ ନେଇକି ନିଜ ଦେଶ ବୋଲି ଗର୍ବ ଅନୁଭବ କରୁଥିଲେ। ସେଲ୍ଫ ଡିଟରମିନେସନ ସୃଷ୍ଟି ହେବା ସମ୍ଭବ ନଥିଲା। Even British India was not administered uniformly. British power started the spreading from the coast of Bengal, Bombay and Madras. ତେଣୁ ଇଷ୍ଟ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆ କମ୍ପାନୀ ଭାରତର ପ୍ରତିଷ୍ଠା ହେବା ଦ୍ୱାରା ଭାରତୀୟ ମାନଙ୍କର ଦୁର୍ବଳତା ଦେଖି ଉପନିବେଶବାଦ ଛାଡ଼ି ଇମ୍ପେରିଆଲିଜମ, ସାମ୍ରାଜ୍ୟବାଦ ଆରମ୍ଭ ହେଲା। ଉପନିବେଶବାଦର ଅନ୍ୟ ଏକ ଭାଇ ହେଉଛି ସାମ୍ରାଜ୍ୟବାଦ। ଧୀରେ ଧୀରେ ଭାରତର ବ୍ରିଟିଶ ମାନଙ୍କର ମୂଳ ଦୁଆ ବେଙ୍ଗଲରୁ ଆରମ୍ଭ ହୋଇଥିଲା। ବେଙ୍ଗଲରୁ ଆସ୍ତେ ଆସ୍ତେ ମାଡ୍ରାସ ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ ପହଞ୍ଚିଲା, ମାଡ୍ରାସରୁ ବମ୍ବେ। ଏଇପରି ଧୀରେ ଧୀରେ ସାରା ଭାରତକୁ ସେମାନେ ଅଧିକାର କରିନେଲେ ଏବଂ ଏକ ବିଶାଳ ଭାରତ ଗଠନ କଲେ। थैंक्स टू ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी, थैंक्स टू ब्रिटिश पार्लियामेंट। एथिपाई मु कथा धन्यवाद दउची, एक विशाल भारतर बॉर्डर से ही तैयारी करथिले। ना मगधर राजा अशोक, ना कनिष्क, ना अन्य कई दक्ष शासक विशाल भारत को एक करि पारिथिले। केवल ब्रिटिश माने ही सक्षम होइतिले एक विशाल भारत गठन करथिले। भारतर एक प्रकृत मानचित्र से ही माने ही तैयारी करथिले। तो भारत को सेल्फ डिटरमिनेशन, आत्मनिर्धारण, आत्ममर्यादा, निज देशर परिचय ब्रिटिश माने आमको देइथिले। Conclusion of the self-determination. Nationality and self-determination are interconnected nations. In the 19th century, they were focused in Europe. After World War I, the focus shifted to Asia and Africa because of their historically anti-imperialist character. The Marxists supported them. The fall of the Soviet Union has led to the program of globalization that undermine the nationalist economics and sentiments. Self-government, self-determination already completed. Now I'm going to the next unity 15. Please see the unity 15. State building and constitutionalism. राष्ट्र निर्माण एवं संविधान प्रस्तुत. राष्ट्र निर्माण एवं संविधान प्रस्तुत. भारत गोटे उपनिवेश राष्ट्र थिबा बेले स्वाधीनता आंदोलन माध्यम भारत निजर देश को फेरी पाई एवं एक विशाल भारत गठन करिथिला. ए विशाल भारत रे एक नूतन सरकार प्रसृष्टि करिथिला जहा थिला संवैधानिक सरकार, constitutional government. Now the topic is state building and constitutionalism. संविधान द्वारा शासक करिबा एटा एक गुरुत्वपूर्ण विषय. आफ्टर द सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर और आफ्टर द डिकेड ऑफ द 1960 1960 दशक पर एक नूतन प्रकार सरकार गठन देखा मिला. आगुरी थिला राजतंत्र, तापरे थिला आरिस्टोक्रासी बा गोष्ठीतंत्र. तेणु मॉडर्न एज रे एक नुआ प्रकार सरकार देखा मिला. ता थिला रिपब्लिक बा डेमोक्रेटिक सरकार, डेमोक्रेटिक गवर्नमेंट. Introduction about the constitutionalism. The concept of the nation and the state grew the parallels in history. Nation indicated a collectively of persons who have a certain bond with each other. State indicates a structured authority to rule over a people in a certain territory. The two are not necessarily coextensive. In 1646, for instance, the Treaty of Westphalia recognized 300 German states. Today, we find only two German-speaking states, Germany and Austria. One of the main reasons of the division of Austria and Germany is religious. Austria is Catholic, Germany Protestant. जो आमर टॉपिक थिला राष्ट्र निर्माण एवं संविधान प्रस्तुति, ए विषय आमे संक्षेप रे कहि पारिबा जे आमे देश कहूचे, राष्ट्र कहूचे, राज्य कहूचे. एक्चुअली माने प्रॉपर वर्ड कोटा आमे गोटे देश को भारत वर्ष कहूचे, देश कहूचे, राज्य कहूचे. इंग्लिश रे किंगडम, स्टेट, नेशन. एक्चुअली व्हिच वर्ड इज द एप्रोप्रिएट वर्ड ऑफ द कंट्री. हम कहा को कहि परिबा कंट्री बोली कहा को कहि पारि. प्रकृति रे कोउटा एटा कंट्री ना स्टेट ना नेशन ना किंगडम. ऑल आर करेक्ट. समय अनुजाई सब नामकरण होइता. राजा समय रे भूखंड को राज्य बा किंगडम कुआ गला. परवर्ती समय ताकू देश बा कंट्री बोली कुआला. कंट्री कंट्री साइड बोली कुआ गला. 1648 मसीह 1648 ମସିହାରେ ୟୁରୋପିଆନ ମାନଙ୍କ ମଧ୍ୟରେ ଏକ ବଡ଼ ଯୁଦ୍ଧ ହେଇଥିଲା। 30 ବର୍ଷିଆ ଯୁଦ୍ଧର ସମାପ୍ତ ଘଟିଥିଲା। ୟୁରୋପ ଦେଶମାନଙ୍କ ମଧ୍ୟରେ 30 ବର୍ଷ ଧରି ଗୋଟେ ଯୁଦ୍ଧ ଚାଲିଥିଲା। ଶେଷରେ 1648 ମସିହାରେ ତାହା ସମାପ୍ତ ହେଲା। ଯୁଦ୍ଧର ସମାପ୍ତି ପରେ ଗୋଟେ ଚୁକ୍ତି ହେଇଥିଲା, ତା ନାଁ ଥିଲା ୱେଷ୍ଟଫାଲିଆ ଟ୍ରିଟି। So it is very important to the nation building of Westphalia Treaty. The new name emerged as the nation state. ସେଠି କଣ୍ଟ୍ରି ରହିଲା ନାହିଁ କି କିଙ୍ଗଡମ ରହିଲା ନାହିଁ, ନୂଆ ନାମ ଦିଆଗଲା ନେସନ ଷ୍ଟେଟ, ଜାତି ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ର। ଛୋଟ ଛୋଟ ରାଜ୍ୟ ଗୁଡ଼ିକ ମିଳିତ ଭାବରେ ଏକ ବୃହତ ଦେଶ ଗଠନ କରିଥିଲେ। ସେ ସମୟରେ ଜର୍ମାନୀ ଅଷ୍ଟ୍ରିଆ ଏକ ଶକ୍ତିଶାଳୀ ରାଜ୍ୟ ଥିଲା। ଜର୍ମାନୀ ଅଷ୍ଟ୍ରିଆ ଇଂଲଣ୍ଡ ୟୁରୋପରେ ଏକ ଶକ୍ତିଶାଳୀ ରାଜ୍ୟ ଥିଲା। ଜର୍ମାନୀ ପାଖରେ ପାଖାପାଖି 300ଟା ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ର ଥିଲା, ଷ୍ଟେଟ ଥିଲା ହେଲା। ୱେଷ୍ଟଫାଲିଆ ଚୁକ୍ତି ପରେ ଜର୍ମାନୀର ଡିଭିଜନ ହେଇଗଲା ଏବଂ ଅଷ୍ଟ୍ରିଆ ଅଲଗା ହେଇଗଲା, ଜର୍ମାନୀ ଅଲଗା ହେଇଗଲା, ଅନ୍ୟାନ୍ୟ ରାଜ୍ୟ ଗୁଡ଼ିକ ଅନ୍ୟ ଦେଶ ସହିତ ମିଶ୍ରଣ ହେଇଗଲା। ତେଣୁ ସମସ୍ତ ରାଜ୍ୟ ଗୁଡ଼ିକ ମିଶି ଏକ ନେସନ ଷ୍ଟେଟ ଗଠନ କରିଥିଲେ। ତେବେ ଜର୍ମାନୀ ଠାରୁ ଅଷ୍ଟ୍ରିଆ କାହିଁକି ଅଲଗା ହେଇଗଲା? ଇଟ ଇଜ ଏ ଭେରି ଇମ୍ପୋର୍ଟାଣ୍ଟ ଥିଙ୍ଗ because it is the matter of religious. Austria is Catholic religion, but Germany Protestant. So this reason they are separate to each other. Primarily, the state is a territory concept, but that nation is a human phenomena. Even since the formation of the United Nations Organization, the composite word nation state has entered the political vocabulary of the world. The United Nations Charter virtually identified the state with the nation. Finally, ଜାତିସଂଘ ବା ୟୁଏନଓ ତାର ନୂତନ ନାମକରଣ କଲା ଯେ ନେସନ, ଷ୍ଟେଟ ୱିଥ ଦ ନେସନ। ଜାତି ଭିତ୍ତିକ ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ର ଗଠନ ହେବାରୁ ତାହା ନେସନ ନାମରେ ନାମିତ କରାଗଲା ହେଲା। The national affairs are, however, more complex than the affairs of the state, even though they are interlinking. The role of the psychology is more important in the affairs of the nation than in the affairs of the state. Political science can deal with state building better than nation building. Even though in the third world countries the term nation building is more popular. Nation building involves not only government, which is the primary focus of state building, but also economic development and psychological integration of a population. State building. Next point is state building. The instrumental requirements of state building. The task of the state building is not a simple one either. State building occurs, say, according to the Almond Powell, when the political elite creates new structures and organization designed penetrate the society in order to regulate behavior in its and draw a larger volume of resources from it. State building is commonly associated with significant increases in the regulative and extractive capabilities of the political system. It involves the determination of the structure of authority, the territorial extent of the spread of the extent of popular conformity with the authority of the means of securing such authority. A crucial test of the authority is the legitimacy that the people accord it and the feeling of satisfaction among the people, which is the roles. History of the states. Ancient Greek and Rome began as a city-state. You know that what is policy? Policy means city-state. Policy means city-states. Greece and Romans are used the policy city-states. Though the more ancient state of the Egypt and Mesopotamia have been described as empires. Mesopotamia and Egyptians also describe the empires. It is doubtful if their authority was as extensive as the of the modern empires. However, both Greece and Rome grew into empires and dissolved in course of time. According to Almond and Powell, common that there are examples, particularly among the great empires such as Imperial Rome, in which the elite never sought to create the common national culture of the loyalty and commitment, but we are content to develop the contrasted and penetrative bureaucracy, while the same of the printing culturally distinct component units to survive and retain the some autonomy. जो एलाइटिस्ट माने जो माने बुद्धिजीवी सर्व उत्कृष्ट गोष्ठी कहुए को एलाइटिस्ट से बुद्धि उन्नत पैसार उन्नत ज्ञान उन्नत से एलाइटिस्ट मान कहुए. So the elitists are give the name of the nation state. The above comment about the Almond Powell smacks of the cultural totalitarianism that is characteristics of the US polity, where knowledge of the English language is the primary condition of a citizenship. It ignores the empirical reality that any large political unity is bound to allow considerable local and cultural autonomy. In order to obtain an overall territorial loyalty of the people to the state. Next point, the value of the Almond Powell schema. Almond Powell also defines that the considerable these authors of the primitive political systems handled their problems largely in diffuse and inter-intent ways by means of and hoc or minimal structural differentiational and specialization. The traditional political system were characterized by specialized regulatory and extractive structures and by a symbolic capability intended to create loyalty among the members of the identity with the larger political systems. Almond ଏବଂ ପାୱେଲ ଏମାନଙ୍କ ମତ ଅନୁସାରେ ନ୍ୟାସନାଲିଟି ଏବଂ ନେସନ ବିଲ୍ଡିଂ ପ୍ରସ୍ତୁତ ହେବା କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ ସହଯୋଗ problems of the participation in the political system of a distribution of the product were still handled. ତେଣୁ ଆଲମଣ୍ଡ ଯାହା କହିଲେ ତା ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ର ଗଠନ କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ ଏହା ସହଯୋଗ ଅଛି ବୋଲି ଯାହା ଜାଣିବାକୁ ପାଇଥାଉ. ନେକ୍ସଟ ପଏଣ୍ଟ, ସମ୍ବିଧାନବାଦ କନଷ୍ଟିଟ୍ୟୁସନାଲିଜିମ୍. ସମ୍ବିଧାନବାଦ ବା କନଷ୍ଟିଟ୍ୟୁସନାଲିଜିମ୍. The study of political constitutionalism occupies a significant place in the shape of comparative politics in view of the fact that it is the constitution. Constitutionalism is a modern concept that derives of a political order governed by law and regulations. It stands for the supremacy of law and not of the individuals. It implies the principles of nationalism, democracy, and limited government. It may be identified with the system of divided power. According to Frederick, constitutionalism, by dividing power, provides a system of effective restraints upon the government action. In studying it, one has to explore the methods of the techniques by which of the restraint by the established and maintained. It is a body of rules ensuring fair play, thus rendering the government responsible. Constitutionalism that stands for the existence of the constitution in a state. संविधानवाद है एक पुस्तक माध्यम आईन माध्यम शासन पद्धति खसड़ा प्रस्तुत करने एवं सांविधानिक पद्धति देशर आईन कानून प्रस्तुत कर शासन करने. In order to have a proper understanding of the term constitutionalism, we must first understand the meaning of terms like constitution of a constitutional government. A constitution may be said to be the collection of principles according to which the power of a government, the right of the governed, and the relations between the two are adjusted. In other words, it may be described as a frame of a political society organized through and by law, in which law has established the permanent institutions with the recognized function and definite rights. According to K.C. Ware, the definite rights, the word constitution is commonly used in at least two senses in a ordinary discussion of political affairs. First of all, it is used to describe the whole system of a government of a country, the collection of rules which establish and regulate to govern the government. These rules are partly legal in the sense that the courts of law will recognize and apply them, and partly non-legal or extra-legal, taking the form of usages, understandings, customs, or convictions which the courts do not recognize as law, but which are not less effective in regulating the government than the rules of law strictly called. In most countries of the world, in the system of government is composed of this mixture of legal and non-legal rules, and it is possible to speak of the collection of rules of the constitution. संविधान कहले एक मिलित पुस्तक आईन सम्मिलित एक पुस्तक जो पुस्तक सहायता राष्ट्र शासित होता है, जैसे सरकार अंग विभाजित होता है, लेजिस्लेटिव बॉडी, एग्जीक्यूटिव बॉडी एंड जुडिशियल बॉडी. यही दृष्टि राष्ट्र गठन करने क्षेत्र में संविधान गठन करने क्षेत्र में यार मुख्य उद्देश्य होची सरकार को डिविजन करने यह द्वारा क्षमता डिविजन द्वारा कौन हुए ना शासन पद्धति उत्तम परिमाण रे हुई थाए। Development of a constitutionalism and historical process of the rise of a constitutional state. The rise of the constitutional state is essentially an historical process whose chief material is content. Content is the history of political institutions occupied with the history of Western political ideas right from the ancient to modern times. Greek constitutionalism. The Greek occupied the first place in the direction who had political separatism as a marked characteristic of the life. They had a city-state system in which the benefits of citizenship were open to the freeman. Only most of the city-states had a direct democratic system. Though Sparta was under the rule of a military junta, the Greeks, however, the peculiar notion about the state and the rule of the people. Therein, as Strong says, a Greek citizen was actually and the person a soldier, a judge, and a member of the governing assembly. आमे ग्रीक सभ्यता को जितले जीवा स्पार्टा और एथेंस शहर कथा हम जानिते स्पार्टा थिला मिलिटारी शहर मिलिटारी शासन थिला और एथेंस थिला गणतंत्र शहर तेणु उभय शहर गोटे देशर अंत थिले मध्य शासन भिन्न थिला तेणु एथेंस शहर रे समस्त लोकों को सब क्षेत्र सहयोग मिलथिला बेले किंतु स्पार्टा शहर रे केवल मिलिटारी क्षेत्र रे सब सुविधा मिलुथिला तेणु ग्रीक सभ्यता रो ही डेमोक्रेटिक बा कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल डेवलप होइतला बोले हमें निसंदेह कहि परिबा सेबे रोमन constitutionalism a great change that occurred after the replace of the city state system and the establishment of a great empire under this रोमान सभ्यता रे मध्य एई संविधान प्रस्तुत क्षेत्र देखिबाकू मिलिथिला आमे जानिते द फादर ऑफ पॉलिटिकल साइंस अरिस्टोटल से 158 राष्ट्र संविधान को अध्ययन करी 158 राष्ट्र संविधान को अध्ययन करी निजर पुस्तक द पॉलिटिक्स रचना करथिले तेणु संविधान गठन क्षेत्र यार प्रमुख भूमिका और राष्ट्र निहाती भूमिका रही कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनलिज्म इन अमेरिका the spirit of the social contract of the Rousseau and the echo in the United States also where in the declaration of independence of 1776 अमेरिका 1776 ख्रीष्टाब्द रे स्वाधीनता प्राप्त करितला यहाँ पर अमेरिका निजको एक गणतांत्रिक राष्ट्र भाव में घोषणा करितला निजर संविधान मध्य प्रस्तुत करितला एही संविधान रे मात्र 7टी आर्टिकल प्रस्तुत करी अमेरिका निज देश शासन करितला भारत के क्षेत्र रे जीवा इंडिया जन्म सार्वभौमत्व राष्ट्र गठन हेबा परे भारत निजे को एक रिपब्लिक कंट्री घोषित करितला डॉक्टर बी आर आंबेडकर एक दीर्घ संविधान प्रस्तुत करथिले ए दीर्घ संविधान रे 395 आर्टिकल एवं 12 टा शेड्यूल गठन करथिले या छला विश्वर सर्वबृहत संविधान यही संविधान अनुसार भारत शासन चलुला और शासन खसड़ा मध्य प्रस्तुत हेउथिला तेणु संविधान आदिर जुगरे संविधान एक गुरुत्वपूर्ण अनुष्ठान ग्रहण करिछि या ग्रीक मॉडल हो बा ब्रिटिश मॉडल हो बा अमेरिकन मॉडल हो किंतु भारत कथा कहले डॉक्टर बी आर आंबेडकर सारा विश्व मॉडल को भारतर मॉडल बनेछन समस्त विश्वर बड़ बड़ संविधान को अध्ययन करी एक विशाल संविधान भारत में प्रस्तुत करछन्ति जेमिति कि अरिस्टोटल 158 सरकार संविधान को अध्ययन करथिले सो इट Indian Constitution is the largest constitution of the world. Next, the evolutionary mode of the constitution making already ମୁଁ କହିସାରିଲିଣି जोटा कि रोमान रही फास्ट ग्रीक्स रे होइतिला तापर रोमान तापर इंग्लैंड तापर अमेरिका धीरे धीरे ये सब गठन बात शेष में भारत रे एक बृहत संविधान गठित होइतिला या पर दक्षिण आफ्रिका रे मध्य गठित होइतिला चाइना रे मध्य संविधान गठन होइतिला the world first such as gathering the Philadelphia Convention of 1787 संविधान प्रस्तुत आम संविधान जनक सॉरी संविधान जननी इंग्लैंड कहूथिबा बेले इंग्लैंड हेउची एक अनरिटन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन अलिखित संविधान अटे किंतु अमेरिका हेउची एक लिखित संविधान जोटा कि 1787 मसीह प्रकृत संविधान प्रस्तुत करथिला फिलाडेल्फिया कन्वेंशन तापरे अन्य देश गुड़िक निज लिखित संविधान प्रस्तुत करथिले द नेक्स्ट पॉइंट कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनलिज्म एंड स्टेट बिल्डिंग कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन एज ए फ्रेमवर्क हिस्टोरिकली देयरफॉर द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ऑफ ए कंट्री हैज डिफाइंड द काउंटर्स ऑफ स्टेट बिल्डिंग स्ट्रक्चरली it is the framework with which the state and the entire political system operate by determining the limits of power of the sovereign and the rights of the people. Setting of a constitution not in the descriptive sense but in the normative one. Simultaneously achieves two fundamental objectives. One, it is separated the state and the civil society. Two, it is frees state authority from the whims of a ruler. State and the civil society. State and the civil society. When the state controls the affairs of a civil society, the system is totalitarian. In the primitive societies, there is no difference between political control and social authority. In the traditional societies, through the dynamic ruler, often in league with the clerical leadership and the feudal subordinates, control social affairs. According to Karl Marx, he observed that it was not before the 18th century that the civil society in Europe became really autonomous. That was the period of developing capitalism and political liberalism. On the other hand, crisis of capitalism is the period of between the two world wars gave rise to totalitarian communism and fascism in Europe. फासीवाद नाजीवाद विश्व को बारंबार युद्ध देइथिला किंतु संविधानवाद विश्व रे शांति मैत्रीता प्रतिष्ठा करिबार यह सहायता होइथिला. नेक्स्ट पॉइंट आर्मी एंड ब्यूरोक्रेसी. A non-political army and a non-partisan bureaucracy are among the highest requirements of constitutionalism. Members of the armed forces and the bureaucracy are placed under the nominal authority of the chief executive of the country. They are recruited through public examination system of different kinds. They are expected to obey orders of the government within the confines of law. संविधान क्षेत्र में आर्मी रो आवश्यकता अछि. देश को सुरक्षा पाई आर्मी अत्यंत आवश्यक. देशर शासन कल चलैया पाई ब्यूरोक्रेसी बा सिविल सर्वेंट मानकर आवश्यकता मध्य रही. एमाने ही प्रकृत शासन कर्ता बा शासन कर प्रकृत ऑपरेटर ब्यूरोक्रेसी माने तांको बिना शासन कल अचल होई. नेक्स्ट पॉइंट द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ऑफ राइट्स. The original meaning of the word right, appropriate, correct. It is necessary to note that the father of the theory of constitutional government, John Locke, was also the father of the theory of natural rights. He meant by the natural claim of people to certain conditions of existence. The mention the right to life of the right to property define the property in the wide sense of the including the body. John Locke ଜଣେ ସମ୍ବିଧାନବାଦୀ ସମ୍ବିଧାନ ପ୍ରସ୍ତୁତ କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ ଲୋକମାନଙ୍କର ସମ୍ପତ୍ତି ସୁରକ୍ଷା କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ ଲୋକମାନଙ୍କୁ ଅଧିକାର ପ୍ରଦାନ କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ ସେ ହିଁ ସର୍ବପ୍ରଥମେ ସ୍ୱର ଉତ୍ତୋଳନ କରିଥିଲେ। Disposed to condition between the power of the government and the rights of the people. Rights of the people were assumed to be safe of long and the power of the government was limited. The theoretical position marked a radical discontinuity with all the previous nations of government. ଗୋଟିଏ ପଟରେ ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ର ବା ସରକାର ଲୋକମାନଙ୍କୁ ଅଧିକାର ଦେଲା ବେଳେ ଅନ୍ୟ ପଟରେ ଲୋକମାନେ ତାଙ୍କର କର୍ତ୍ତବ୍ୟ ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ରପତି କରିଥାନ୍ତି। ଏହି ଅଧିକାର ସର୍ବପ୍ରଥମେ ଇଂଲଣ୍ଡର ମାଗ୍ନା କାର୍ଟା in 1215 1215 ମସିହାରେ the British aristocracy forced the king to sign document that later came to the known as the Magna Carta. ଯଦି ଆମେ ଫଣ୍ଡାମେଣ୍ଟାଲ ରାଇଟ୍ କଥା କହିବା ସର୍ବପ୍ରଥମେ ରାଜାଙ୍କ ବିରୁଦ୍ଧରେ ଲଢ଼ି 1215 ମସିହାରେ ମାଗ୍ନା କାର୍ଟାରେ ଯେଉଁ ଅଧିକାର ମିଳିଥିଲା ତାହା ଏକ ଐତିହାସିକ ଡକୁମେଣ୍ଟ ଅଟେ। In 1628 the parliament submitted the crown petition of rights that was not immediately granted. ପୁଣି ଥରେ ଇଂଲଣ୍ଡରେ 1628 ମସିହାରେ ପାର୍ଲିଆମେଣ୍ଟରେ ଏକ ଅଧିକାର ସମ୍ବଳିତ ପିଟିସନ ଦାଖଲ କରାଯାଇଥିଲା। 1648 ମସିହାରେ ମଧ୍ୟ ଗୃହ ବିଦ୍ରୋହ ଦେଖାଯାଇଥିଲା। The Civil War of 1648 resulted the Charles first losing his head. 1688 ମସିହାରେ 1688 ମସିହାରେ ରାଜା ଚାର୍ଲସଙ୍କର ମୁଣ୍ଡ କାଟ ହେଇଥିଲା ଏବଂ ନାଗରିକ ମାନଙ୍କୁ ଅଧିକାର ପ୍ରଦାନ କରାଯାଇଥିଲା। ତାପରେ ମାଗ୍ନା କାର୍ଟା ପରେ ଫିଲାଡେଲଫିଆ 1789ରେ ଯେଉଁ ଫିଲାଡେଲଫିଆ କନଫରେନ୍ସ ହେଇଥିଲା ତାହା ବିଶ୍ୱବାସୀକୁ ସର୍ବବୃହତ ଅଧିକାର ପ୍ରଦାନ କରିଥିଲା। ଏ ଅଧିକାର କ'ଣ ଥିଲା? ନ୍ୟାଚୁରାଲ ରାଇଟ୍ସ, ପଲିଟିକାଲ ରାଇଟ୍ସ, ସିଭିଲ ରାଇଟ୍ସ, ନ୍ୟାସନାଲ ରାଇଟ୍ସ, ଫଣ୍ଡାମେଣ୍ଟାଲ ରାଇଟ୍ସ, ହ୍ୟୁମାନ ରାଇଟ୍ସ ଲୋକମାନଙ୍କୁ ସେ ପ୍ରଦାନ କରିଥିଲା। Conclusion. In this unity you have studied that the concept of a nation and a state had witnessed the parallel growth in history, for the two are not necessary coexistence with the state in a territorial concept of a concept. The concept of a nation has a human dimensions. The state is often identified with the concept of a nation. At the same time, the two concepts are interlinked. Nation building involves both economic development and the psychological integration of the population. The state building, the determination of the authority, territorial extent of the spread conformity with the authority in crucial requirements. The preservation of rights and the promotes of the interest of the population constitutes the core of state building. ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ର ଗଠନ କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ ସମ୍ବିଧାନର ଆବଶ୍ୟକତା ବିଷୟରେ ଆମେ ପୁଙ୍ଖାନୁପୁଙ୍ଖ ଆଲୋଚନା କଲେ। Now I am going to next unity 16. Please watch the unit 16. Ethnicity, politics and state. Ethnicity, politics and state. What is ethnicity? ମୂଳ ଜାତି, ମୂଳ ବଂଶ, ଆଦିବାସୀ, ଏଇ ଯୋଉ ଶବ୍ଦ ଗୁଡାକୁ ଆମେ ଏଥନିସିଟି କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ ବ୍ୟବହାର କରିପାରିବା। ଯେଉଁମାନେ ଜଳ, ଜମି, ଜଙ୍ଗଲ କୁ ନେଚୁରାଲ ଗଡ କୁ ବିଶ୍ୱାସ କରନ୍ତି ଓ ନେଚର ରହିବାକୁ ଭଲ ପାଆନ୍ତି, that ethnic group. Race, ethnicity had cultural identity, the complex concepts that are historical, socially and contextual based. The social relations according to the genes are dynamic. Their means change over time. Apple refers to them as a place marked operating in a complex political and social arena. Historically, the term ethnic derives from the Greek ethnos. The term ethnic derives from the Greek word ethnos, which which refers to heathen nations or peoples not converted to Christianity. It was also used to refer to race or a large group of people having common traits and customs, or to exclude primitive groups. The anthropological literature. The anthropological literature, the term ethnic group is generally used to the distinguish approach with first a largely biological self perpetuating, a largely biological self perpetuating. Number two, share fundamental cultural values relies in over unity in cultural forms. Number three, makes up the field of communication and interactions. Number four, has a membership which identified itself and is identified by others as constituting a category distinguishable from other categories of the same order. By ethnic group, sociologists generally mean a relatively stable socio-cultural unity performing an unspecified number of functions. Bound together by the language, often linked a territory and derived actually allegedly from a system of kinship in the sense of ethnic community, is an extremely old collective reality. International Encyclopedia of Social Science defines an ethnic group as a distinct category of the population in a larger society whose culture is usually different from its own. The members of such group are or feel themselves or the to be bound together by the common ties and race of nationality of culture. ଆନ୍ତର୍ଜାତିକ ଏନସାଇକ୍ଲୋପିଡ଼ିଆ ଏକ ସୋସିଆଲ ସାଇନ୍ସ ଯେଉଁ ଅଛି ଏନସାଇକ୍ଲୋପିଡ଼ିଆ ଡିକ୍ସନାରୀ ମତ ଅନୁସାରେ ଗୋଟିଏ ନିର୍ଦ୍ଦିଷ୍ଟ କମ୍ୟୁନିଟିର ବା ନିର୍ଦ୍ଦିଷ୍ଟ ଗୋଷ୍ଠୀର ଲୋକମାନେ ନିଜସ୍ୱ ଭାଷା, ନିଜସ୍ୱ ଧର୍ମ, ନିଜସ୍ୱ ସଂସ୍କୃତି ବ୍ୟବହାର କରି ନିଜ ଗୋଷ୍ଠୀ ଗଠନ କରି ନିଜ ଦ୍ୱାରା ଶାସିତ ହୋଇ ପ୍ରକୃତିକୁ ନିଜର ଦେବତା ରୂପେ ଚିନ୍ତା କରି ନିଜକୁ ପ୍ରକୃତିର ମାନବ ବୋଲି ପରିଚୟ ଦେଇଥିବା ଗୋଷ୍ଠୀମାନଙ୍କୁ ଏଥନିକ୍ ଗ୍ରୁପ ବୋଲି କୁହାଯାଏ। In modern political usage, the term ethnic is generally used as a designation of social unity based upon common and separate language or dialect. Historical, living in a defined area, occupation, and a mood of life, cultural and social traditions, customs, and folklore. It is also the social class, racial or national minority groups, and also the distinguished the cultural and social groups in society. There, the however, difference with regard to the emphasis. Some would include a religious denomination under the rubric. Some would identify the race as an ethnic group, whereas for the other, the latter is a smaller division or race and so. ଆମେ ସିଧା ଭାଷାରେ କହିପାରିବା ଏଥନିକ ଗ୍ରୁପ ମାନେ ମୂଳ ବାସିନ୍ଦା, ମୂଳବାସୀ, ଆଦିବାସୀ, ପ୍ରକୃତ ଅଧିବାସୀଙ୍କୁ ଆମେ ସିଧାସଳଖ କହିପାରିବା ଏଥନିକ ଗ୍ରୁପ। ପ୍ରିମିଟିଭ ଗ୍ରୁପ ବା ଏଥନିକ ଗ୍ରୁପ ଆମେ ତାକୁ ଅନୁମାନ କରି କହିପାରିବା। କ୍ୟାରେକ୍ଟରିଷ୍ଟିକ୍ସ ଅଫ ଏଥନିକ ଗ୍ରୁପ, ତାଙ୍କର ସବୁ ଲକ୍ଷଣ କ'ଣ? ଏଥନିକ ଗ୍ରୁପ ମାନେ ଏକ ନିଜସ୍ୱ ଭାଷା। ଫାର୍ଷ୍ଟ ହେଲା ଲାଙ୍ଗୁଏଜ, କଲଚର, tradition, custom, folk dance, uh, love to nature, worship to nature god. That are the characteristics of a ethnic group. ଏସବୁ ଲକ୍ଷଣ ଆମେ କାହାଠୁ ପାଉ? ଆଦିବାସୀ ମାନଙ୍କଠୁ ପାଉ। ସୋ ଆଦିବାସୀ ମାନେ ହେଉଛନ୍ତି ପ୍ରକୃତ ଏଥନିକ ଗ୍ରୁପ। ଦିନ ଥିଲା ଆମେ ମଧ୍ୟ ସମସ୍ତେ ଏଥନିକ ବା ଆଦିବାସୀ ଥିଲୁ। ପରବର୍ତ୍ତୀ ସମୟରେ ଆମେ ସଭ୍ୟ ସମାଜ କରି ଆର୍ଯ୍ୟ ସମାଜରେ ନିଜକୁ ଆର୍ଯ୍ୟ ସଭ୍ୟତାରେ ପ୍ରତିଷ୍ଠିତ କଲୁ, ଆର୍ଯ୍ୟ ବୋଲି ପରିଚୟ ଦେଲୁ। ନେକ୍ସଟ ପଏଣ୍ଟ, ଏଥନିସିଟି। ଏଥନିସିଟି, the present day context those groups which in given social context consciously choose to emphasize their most meaningful primary extra final identity on the basis of religious, racial, cultural, linguistic, national characteristics, or a combination of any of them are referred to the ethnic group. The number of such ethnic groups sometimes refer to the people of a nationality. In enormous the world over, how how many are there is not easy to determine because there are very systematic treaties dealing with these matters. The situation, the situation is particularly significant. The situation is particularly significant in numerous new states that have achieved independence since the Second World War. The post-colonial states in Asia, Africa, and Caribbean, Asia, Africa, and the Caribbean. In most of the multi-ethnic states are the world over, in recent years there has been resurgence of ethnic and cultural demanded and group consciousness, which is generally referred Next point is federalism. The words federation, federalism, etc. have etymological roots in the Latin term "feudus". It means alliance, association, concept, compact, contract, league, treaty, union, etc. As a mechanism of governance, federalism divides central power between the central government and the regional sub-unity, where ethnic or national minorities are regionally concentrated. The boundaries of a federal subunit can be drawn so that the national minority from the majority in one of the sub-unity. Under these circumstances, federalism can provide extensive self-government for a national minority, guaranteeing its ability to make decisions in certain areas without being outvoted by the larger society. Now I am going to the conclusion point. Summary. Modern societies are increasingly confronted with minority groups demanding recognition of their identity and accommodation of their cultural differences. The group concerned with the identity are generally known as the ethnic. The contemporary political usage the terms ethnic and minorities are generally used to interchangeably to describe groups which share a common language, race, religion, or national origin other than that of the dominant group in the state. In that context, the overwhelming majority of the societies today are the multi-ethnic and multicultural. Finally, ଆମେ ଶେଷରେ କହିପାରିବା ଆଜିର ଆଧୁନିକ ସମାଜ ହେଉଛି multi-ethnic and multiculturalist। ତେଣୁ ଆମେ ସମସ୍ତେ ଯେ ଆଦିବାସୀ ଏହା ଅସ୍ୱୀକାର କରିପାରିବା ନାହିଁ। ଆମ ସମସ୍ତେ ସେଇ ମୂଳ ବାସିନ୍ଦାରୁ ହିଁ ଆଜି ଆର୍ଯ୍ୟ ସଭ୍ୟତା ବା ସିଭିଲ ସୋସାଇଟିରେ ହିଁ ପହଞ୍ଚିଛୁ। Ethnicity, ethnic discrimination, accommodation, religious intolerance and tolerance as such continue to the important issues of the contemporary world। ତେଣୁ ଆମେ ଆଜି ଉଚ୍ଚ ନିଚ ଯେଉଁ ବାଛୁଛେ ବା ଆମ ଭିତରେ ଏଇ ଯେଉଁ tolerance into ସୃଷ୍ଟି ହେଉଛି ଏହା କେବଳ ତୁଚ୍ଛାକୁ ମାତ୍ର because one day we are as a all are brothers। Thank you everyone। Today I am completed the unity 16। Unit 16 already completed। Tomorrow I will be start the unity 17। Thank you everyone। Thank you everyone। Once again, thank you all of you। The class is over।